You're listening to ayahuascapodcast.com.
People that live in the jungle try ayahuasca because they are having difficulties. They need to learn how to deal with the coldness of the night better. Or they go and try ayahuasca because they lost some objects and they need to find the object. But when Western people drink ayahuasca, we go often with mental health difficulties. No, we go after a breakup. We go because we have depression. We have anxiety. We cannot sleep. It's a very different kind of participant. They have different kinds of intentions. We can divide the work with ayahuasca in 3 different stages: the preparation for the ceremony, during the ceremony, and after ceremony. Thinking about the preparation for the ceremony, we think that in general it is necessary a health form to check if the person is ready in terms of physical health. And then we have during the ceremony. Indigenous people teach that in order to facilitate properly ayahuasca, a guide needs a long training. It's very hard to learn, takes a long time, and requires very specific skills. It's not based only on good intentions, but in developing certain strengths in the mind, in the body, in the energetic field, spiritually too. And then we have the after the ceremony. And after the ceremony starts what we can call the integration process, which means how to take what we receive in the ceremony and how to apply that into our day-to-day life.
Hi guys, and welcome to Ayahuasca Podcast. As always, with the host Sam Believ. Today I'm having a conversation with David Londoño. David is a Colombian psychologist and a researcher at ICEERS, the International Center for Ethnobotanical Education, Research and Service. He specializes in the psychological foundations of ayahuasca work with the focus on safety, integration, and therapeutic use. David bridges clinical insights with traditional Amazonian knowledge and brings a unique perspective informed by his Colombian roots, exploring themes like spiritual bypassing, trauma healing, and the cultural context of plant medicine. This episode is sponsored by La Huayra Ayahuasca Retreat. At La Huayra, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. La Huayra, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you. David, welcome to the show.
Hello, Sam. Hello to everyone. For me, it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for the invitation. It's good to be here.
You're welcome. David, tell us a little bit about your story. You're growing up in Colombia, and what brought you to work with ayahuasca and with the ICEERS?
It is a long story. It started more than 20 years ago. I was living in Colombia and I was studying psychology. And while I was studying psychology, I started to assist to ceremonies, ayahuasca ceremonies in my country, and led by indigenous people. And I became really interested in the potential of ayahuasca for healing, for personal growth, and for spiritual openness. And I saw a lot of very therapeutic, powerful, and very fascinating processes around ayahuasca. So I started to become really interested while I was very young. And after finishing my studies in psychology, I traveled to Argentina and I started to work there with ayahuasca guide, helping him. And while I was in Argentina, someone told me, if you really want to learn more about the work with plant medicine, you need to go to the source. You need to go to the jungle. You need to move to the jungle. And I thought that it was a good advice, and I moved to Peru, to a place in the Peruvian Amazonas that is called Tarapoto, and I started to work there in a retreat center as a therapist and helping people with their integration and studying there in the area with different traditional healers. And while I was there, I was still amazed about the therapeutic potential of ayahuasca, but I also started to realize that more or less often people get harmed too, and people develop different kind of difficulties. Some people develop psychological problems. Some people have physical problems. Some people have energetical problems, and it was really sad because people went there to receive healing, but ended receiving some sort of harm. So I started to pay a lot of attention to safety and to integration. And I realized that in order to promote safety and well-being for non-indigenous people trying ayahuasca, it's necessary to consider other kind of framework, other kind of approach. And that in that regard, psychology and psychotherapy has a lot to offer. So I started to be very interested in this bridge between psychology, psychotherapy, and plant medicine. And after 6 years there, I joined ICERS. And in the ICERS, I worked with Jerónimo Mazarraza, and we studied a lot safety and a lot ethics regarding ayahuasca use in non-native context. And we talk with scientists, with psychiatrists, with psychologists, with facilitators, with guides, with retreat centers in order to learn more what are the best practices to promote safety and health and good integration of this kind of work for Western people. And we started to offer a course on that regard that is called AyaSafety. It's a course directed toward ayahuasca guides. So, and after 20 years, I'm still very, very interested in this bridge between psychology, psychotherapy, and plant medicine, particularly ayahuasca, San Pedro, and Amazonian medicines. And yes, that is like the summary of it. I work in the ICER Support Center, and we receive constantly consultations from different parts of the world of people that have some sort of difficulty around plant medicine, some sort of problem, some sort of conflict, some sort of confusion, and so on and so forth. So we pay a lot of attention to these difficulties and to how to prevent them, how to work with them when they appear.
Yeah. So I'm not Colombian. I'm originally from Latvia, but I live in Colombia. And just like you, I also started my journey with the medicine here in Colombia. And my first ceremonies, they were, Colombian style ceremonies around big cities in Colombia, like around Bogota, Medellin. It's like a finca, and their shaman comes and people come, and it's all kind of like last minute, and you just come over, they give you a cup, and you just kind of bring your own mattress, and then you share a bucket with someone, and you figure out yourself sort of style. So I mean, it was maybe not optimal from the point of view of how, for example, we do the ceremonies, or how I think it should be done. But I got lucky. I wasn't hurt by it. I was actually still healed, and I had good result. But I've met so many Colombians that when I tell them what I do, they're like, no, it's like, this is dangerous. And they all have a story of some long, far away uncle who got psychosis. And so I think about it a lot, and also think about, the dangers of it as well. And obviously here at Loara, we have had more than, several thousands of people, and the cases where people feel worse afterwards are extremely rare. Like, I don't know, I can only recall less than 5 people that felt destabilized, and then with the help they received, they got better than before. But so ayahuasca is a very strong tool, and I believe that sometimes it's just not done properly, and there's definitely this part missing, the part that you're studying, the safety, the preparation, the container, the integration. So talk to us, how should it be done properly to make sure that people have predominantly positive experiences and productive experiences, and not the ones that make them feel worse afterwards?
Well, this is a very important question and also very complex question, no? Because depend on the participant, depend on the context, depend on the background of the participant, depend on the previous experience of the participant, and so on and so forth. So like there are many different factors here, but in a general term, you can think about 3 different stages, and I'm talking about ayahuasca in non-native context, no? Because native indigenous people know really well how to work with ayahuasca in their context. They are masters of it, and they have been working with ayahuasca for thousands of years. So we have nothing but to learn from them. But in non-native contexts, like in cities, and when the participants come from Western cultures, there are different factors. On one hand, because people that went there, they don't have the cultural knowledge and the cultural background in order to deal with altered states of consciousness, and in order to deal with ayahuasca, in order to deal with massive contact with your own unconscious, sometimes with your own shadow, sometimes with your own pain, with your own suffering, with your own emotions that has been repressed for years, and suddenly to be in contact with all of that can be difficult and sometimes can be overwhelming. And we also lack the foundation for the spiritual openness that often ayahuasca tend to create. And if you are there in the middle of a ceremony and suddenly you are having visions about the spiritual world, that can be pretty and amazing, but for some people that can be also very scary. And if you are, for instance, having contacts with your ancestors or with people that already passed away, for some people that can be really, really interesting, but for some people can be very difficult to handle, no, and very, very different than our own day-to-day experience of life, no? So, coming back to the original question, no, we can divide the work with ayahuasca in 3 different stages, no? The preparation for the ceremony, during the ceremony, and after ceremony. So, thinking about the preparation for the ceremony, we think that in general, it is necessary a health form to check if the person is ready in terms of physical health, if the blood pressure, if the heart rate, if the general sense of strength in the body, if the general system of the body are working fine in order to have this generally strong experience that ayahuasca represents. So, and if there could be or not any kind of interaction with medication or with antidepressives, for instance, or medicine for the blood pressure and so on and so forth, because ayahuasca is not for everyone. This is one thing that we need to take into account. Then we have something that we would consider as a first interview, because not only physically but also psychologically, ayahuasca is not for everyone, and some people with what is called in psychology complex trauma, some people with difficult issues around control, some people with difficulties in the relationship with reality, like for instance in psychosis or in schizophrenia or in borderline personality disorder, are not the best candidates to drink ayahuasca. And if for those cases, ayahuasca can bring more danger than healing. And that's something that is necessary to take into account, doing a properly screening. And then we have the preparation, the intention, the diet, and so on and so forth. And then we have during the ceremony. And during the ceremony, indigenous people teach that in order to facilitate properly ayahuasca, a guide needs a long training. Because it's a very delicate process. It's very hard to learn, takes a long time, and requires very specific skills. It's not based only on good intentions, but in developing certain strengths in the mind, in the body, in the energetic field, spiritually too. So the guy that offers ayahuasca has to be extremely well prepared. And nowadays we are finding people that just learn in 2 months or in 3 months and start to facilitate ceremonies, and that essentially represents a risk for the participants and for the guide too. And then we have the after the ceremony, and after the ceremony starts what we can call the integration process, which means how to take what we receive in the ceremony and how to apply that into our day-to-day life, how to take the insights to the everyday life, how to make sense of the visions, how to understand the dynamics that appear during the ceremony, how to deal with the messages that we receive, or with the lack of messages. And all of that sometimes requires help, and sometimes requires another person to help us to make sense of it and to avoid difficult and dangerous places and to make the most of it. And that's what we can call generally the integration stage. So in the 3 stages, there are a lot of factors to take into account, and it is a complex process, no? How to guarantee really safety for a participant, and requires a lot of dedication from the people that organize the sessions. And coming back to the original question, the people that live in the jungle normally have different kinds of questions when they try and drink ayahuasca, no? People that live in the jungle, for instance, try ayahuasca because they are having difficulties when they have to go at night to fish something because it's too cold. So they need to learn how to deal with the coldness of the night better. Or they go and try ayahuasca because they lost some objects and they need to find the object. Or they are dealing with companies that are extracting wood from their territories, and the questions are about how to deal with the companies that are extracting the wood or the gold or the oil. So they have different kinds of intentions. But when Western people drink ayahuasca, we go often with mental health difficulties. No, we go after a breakup. We go because we have depression. We have anxiety. We cannot sleep. We have post-traumatic disorder. We have, difficulties to finding a partner, and so on and so forth. So it's a very different kind of participant, and this other kind of participant requires another kind of integration process. And in that regard, we need knowledge from the traditional world, but we need also knowledge from our own culture in order to make the most of it and to guarantee a smooth work with ayahuasca. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation. Thank you. The analogy I like to use is, ayahuasca is a very strong tool. It's a very powerful tool for mental health and for many other things. But if you think about tool, for example, if you take a hammer, you can take a hammer and you can use it to build a house. Or you can take a hammer and you can punch someone in the head and kill them. So the tool doesn't change. What changes is the intention and the professionalism of the person that uses the tool. For example, somebody can hit their finger and make their nail blue because they don't know how to use it, but somebody can make very nice things with that tool. So as I like to say, is if you have a real medicine, real ayahuasca or jahe, if you have real shaman from tradition who knows exactly what he's doing, who's been trained, and then you follow all the instructions that the retreat provides you that talk about the things that you talked in preparation, then it can be very life-changing and very safe. So it's less about the tool, it's more about how we use it. What I want to talk to you about, because I don't have that many Colombians coming to my retreat. I think I interviewed Joe Tafur, a writer. He's Colombian, but he grew up in the US. And I interviewed my shaman. We interviewed him. He's Colombian, but so it's pretty rare. And I want to talk to you about, how does it feel to be Colombian? Here, if I'm not a Colombian, but I'm dealing with those cultural misconceptions every day, and sort of working on slowly rebranding this country from drugs to medicines, right? How does it feel? You're in Spain, for example. When you say you're Colombian, the people always say, cocaine and Pablo Escobar, and how does it feel? How do you react to that? And the other part of this question is, being a Colombian and growing up in this culture, what have you observed as an attitude of people towards ayahuasca or jahe, as it's called here?
For Colombian people, you mean? Or
Colombian, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, indeed, there are many prejudices around Colombia, and people imagine some sort of territory full of cocaine and war and narcotraffic and a huge jungle and people just using small boats in order to move from one river to the next one, and a very complicated place in terms of war and so on and so forth. But indeed, Colombia is a huge country. Yes, has jungle, but has many cities and many urban areas. The conflict around narcotraffic is centered only in particular spots in the area, and many places in Colombia are very, very safe to visit. So it is very sad, these prejudices that are still very installed in many different countries, and Colombia is full of different treasures. Among them, the many different ethnic groups that are still alive and that keep taking care of their knowledge and their traditions, and keep taking care of the earth and honoring their own cultures and fighting for survival in modern times. And what kind of attitude do I find in the people regarding ayahuasca and jahe? Well, normally there are two kinds of attitudes regarding plant medicine in general. On one hand, we have the prejudice. So people that believe that, this psychedelic is a psychedelic, or it is some sort of drug that people try to avoid themselves and to some sort of recreational consumption, and that is dangerous and that is illegal, and that we have to be very afraid of these plants because can make us crazy and so on and so forth, no? And we have the other polarity, and the other polarity, I think that is almost as dangerous as the first one, which is these plants are the magical stuff, the magical wand that are going to touch us and are going to fix everything. So one night of ayahuasca is going to fix our addiction, our depression, our existential crisis, our childhood wounds, and we need you to go there and to drink the brew, and everything is going to be fixed from one night to the next day. And if you check in YouTube, there are many videos around how ayahuasca changed my life in one day, and it's very popular among Hollywood celebrities. And I think that is also problematic, because it's not true. Change requires a lot of work, long-term work, and a lot of commitment, and implies a lot of time often, and the good methods, and often is not just about ayahuasca, but requires other kind of complementary approach, and it's not a shortcut. Ayahuasca is not a shortcut. It can be in good hands with the proper facilitation, preparation, integration, can be very, very powerful, and can bring a lot of help, but it's not a shortcut. And if we try ayahuasca as a shortcut, probably we are going to be disappointed. So in terms of opinion, that's what I find normally, these extremes.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen both myself. I've observed both sides myself, and well, the difference I think here in Colombia as well is that this is a land where magic is pretty much still very alive. Like there's people actively use plants. Every market you go to, it has plants, and it has the amulets and chants and stuff like that. And it's very, brujeria is something that, people still talk about daily. And, they say Colombia is a land of magical realism. I don't know if you, being Colombian, like, how do you see it, because, there's songs like, Tu me hiciste brujeria. It's like, it's a big part of the culture. So just talk to us about that. I'm just curious to know, how is it, being a Colombian and growing up in this culture, and then how does ayahuasca play a part in all of that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because yes, indeed, in the cultural framework of, in general, Latin America, it is more or less common to consider things as spirits, and energies, and to understand that certain places are alive, and that nature is sentient, and has consciousness, and that our ancestors play an important role in our present lives, and that it's possible to possible and common to have certain relationship with the spiritual world. And we in Colombia, we grew having that as some sort of per-granted experience. No, it is like what we can call normal, but it is true that from other perspectives, and from people that are born in other cultures, all of that seems like magic. So what we consider magic from the outside, for traditionally oriented people, is a very regular part of life, and the other way around. So that's what I mention as a cultural container, on the cultural framework, that give us a person some resources and some possibilities, or some limitations. For instance, I live in Spain, and in general in Europe, I can find a certain tendency to what we can call nihilism, and to skepticism, and to a very strong disconnection from nature and from the spiritual world. So that is a very different cultural imprint when you are going to work with plant medicine, and can be challenging to enter into our territory, in which the rules are different and the framework is different and the paradigm is different, but can be also very enriching because you learn a lot when you participate in other cultures.
Definitely, I think the indigenous people, even in big cities in Colombia, the culture is still very much so mixed, so that some of the culture of plant medicines and connection to nature, it still remained mixed in with, even in big cities. And I guess that's a good thing when it comes to working with medicine. Also, I've heard somewhere that Colombia is in the top 3 of the countries in the world based on the percentage of the population that have tried ayahuasca. I think it's somewhere around like 0.5% or in between 0.5% and 1%, which is sounds very little, but it is actually still quite a lot comparing to the rest of the world. So let's talk about bad trips. What are bad trips? Are they really bad? What to do with them? Should we avoid them, etc.? What is your opinion?
Yeah, it is an important subject. Generally, the concept of bad trip comes from psychedelic work. And it is, from the concept, you have this notion of trip, no? Which originally is very associated with drugs and with recreational drugs and with drugs used to entertain yourself or to avoid certain pains or certain suffering that you can find in your own life. So when you try ayahuasca or master plan work, the approach is very different. In one hand, because we don't drink, well, I think we should not approach ayahuasca as a recreational substance or as something to avoid life or avoid our own difficulties, but indeed is something that can help us to connect with ourselves and to connect with our own lives and to connect with others. And that sometimes implies certain suffering, because if we have been trying to avoid, for instance, our own anger or our own sadness or our own grief for some years and suddenly we try ayahuasca in order to develop the therapeutic process, make us to connect with these difficult emotions and to, for instance, to contact our own sadness or our own despair or our own anger, we can believe that is quotation marks a bad trip, but indeed is part of the therapeutic effect of the plant that is helping us to touch and to go through all of that in order to elaborate those moments of our life and those unresolved wounds and so on and so forth. Can be painful, but it is for a good reason. It is part of the work. And sometimes people are confronted with very difficult situations of their lives, or with very, very difficult memories, or very difficult relationships, and they ended thinking like, oh, this was a bad trip because it was not, I was not feeling happy during or afterwards. But indeed, from the therapeutic angle, it was a very good therapeutic experience because it helped the person to realize all of that and to go through it and to liberate part of it and to have realizations and so on and so forth. So depend on the perspective. But also sometimes people have journeys in which, because a lack of preparation, a lack of screening, a lack of integration, or just bad facilitation during the night, people get harmed. And people get experiences with ayahuasca that can be traumatic, that can be harmful, that people drink too much, people drink too fast. Just today I was talking with a person that drink more than 10 times in just 1 month without preparation and without integration, and the person ends developing some sort of anxiety disorder. So sometimes what people report as a problem, it is a real problem, and it's not a therapeutic outcome. So it is necessary to have some sort of discernment about what was going on there. It was a therapeutic result, or if indeed something went wrong and requires to be addressed in order to, make the people feel stable and with good orientation again.
Definitely, ayahuasca has to be taken very carefully and with a lot of respect and preparation. I agree with that. And bad trips sometimes can be very productive as well. Let's take it to the more positive side. Let's talk about the benefits and therapeutic potential of ayahuasca with depression, addiction, grief, and trauma.
The therapeutic benefits of ayahuasca, this is a big question, no? On one hand, people often call ayahuasca a master plant. And that comes also from the indigenous wisdom and the indigenous knowledge. And from the therapeutic, from the indigenous perspective, and from the traditional indigenous perspective, plants are sentient and alive. They are not just an object that is there in order to humans, take advantage of them, but have a soul and have intentions, and you can develop relationship with them, and they can teach you different types of knowledge. So when you drink ayahuasca, ayahuasca can teach you about many different things, and that can be extremely therapeutic. Ayahuasca can teach you how to handle certain situations. Ayahuasca can teach you how to deal with certain emotions. Ayahuasca can teach you how to grieve. Ayahuasca can teach you about how to, improving your work with your family and so on and so forth. Like it is like to visit a teacher, no, a very old and wise teacher. That's in one side. On the other side, ayahuasca facilitates introspection. So when we drink ayahuasca, it is easier to go inside of us and to essentially develop more self-knowledge. And that can be extremely therapeutic, because if we know ourselves better, we can essentially deal with the challenges of life with more preparation and with more wisdom. No, we need to know ourselves to live better with ourselves and with others. And self-knowledge is like an essential aspect of life for many, many different wisdom traditions. And ayahuasca facilitates that introspection and insights. It's easier to develop insight when we are in the altered state of consciousness that ayahuasca help to appear. On the other hand, ayahuasca is purgative. And in different areas of the jungle, healers call ayahuasca the purge, no? Emphasizing or focusing on the cleansing aspect of the ayahuasca. And that means that ayahuasca helps us to clean our mind, clean our bodies, clean our emotions, and clean our energetic field. And cleansing is a very important aspect of traditional medicine. And traditional healers work around cleansing because that is an important aspect of the prevention of illness, and also an important aspect of the, health. So in the jungle, in certain areas, when people have problems with their works or with hunting or with their relationships, they go and they ask for a purge. And cleansing is a very important aspect of traditional medicine. And ayahuasca brings cleansing. This is another therapeutic aspect of ayahuasca. And ayahuasca also often for people at some point help to reconnect with spirituality. And in a world where there is a lot of discontent with religious traditions and a lot of distrust around religion, and many people, develop some sort of atheism, as a consequence of the distrust regarding the religious institutions. It's very important to reconnect with spirituality in a way that is not dogmatic, is not mediated by an institution. It is not mediated by a particular dogmatic religion. No, it is like a connection with spirituality, and that can be extremely therapeutic. And on the other hand, ayahuasca helps us often to reconnect with nature. Because, we live in apartments, we drive cars, we use our mobiles all of the time, and gradually, without realizing it, we lose connection with earth. And to feel part of nature again can be very important for health too. So, and then we have a specific therapeutic effects of ayahuasca, helping people to reprocess certain wounds from different perspectives, like can happen when someone is dealing with trauma in a good context, of course. Can help people to recover some sense of direction in life, and can help people to understand more around the source of the pain or the emotional pain that is extremely important in different when you deal with different problems, including addictions. So the list is big, and we can talk about it for hours, but of course has many important therapeutic effects.
Yeah, we can talk about ayahuasca for many hours. That's why I have this podcast and now close to 100 conversations about ayahuasca and from a very different angles. David, thank you so much for your knowledge. Thank you for your perspective. Where can people find more about you, where they can learn more about your work?
Yes, if you check for my profile in Google, you can find my David Londoño psychology. If you look for that, you can find my profile in different websites, and it's possible to connect with me.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Thank you for the work you're doing. Guys, check him out. He's it's very important to look at the safety of this work. I will see you in the next episode of Ayahuasca Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for the invitation.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to support us and psychedelic renaissance at large, please follow us and leave us a like wherever it is you're listening. Share this episode with someone who will benefit from this information. Nothing in this podcast is intended as medical advice, and it is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This episode is sponsored by La Huayra Ayahuasca Retreat. At La Huayra, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. La Huayra, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you.